My first teacher was the natural world. I was lucky enough to grow up in a working class neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the neighborhood bordered a old farm field that was returning to prairie, and I spent most of my youth, it seems like, in the field among the trees and weeds and butterflies. And I like to say some of my best friends are trees. I think I learned from trees the importance of being rooted in place and of immersion in the great powers of wind and light, which, are not bad lessons for a poet to learn. My parents, too, were important to me as kind of being formative. They both worked very hard all their lives, but they had a deep appreciation for beauty, which they passed along to all their children, as well as for language and for books. But when I think of my literary uh, parents, I think of two teachers I had at the University of Iowa Writers' Workshop when I studied there. The first was Jane Cooper, a phenomenal poet, but also a woman who had struggled as a woman of her generation to find her voice. And she went through periods of silences in her life when she wasn't publishing. And she knew that it's often, that women often tend to be self-effacing or tentative about themselves and their work. And she was a great coach, a cheerleader, always nudging me to keep at the work. I remember she once said to me, "Claire, you seem always to be preparing for some mythical life. Just live." And I still hear her voice when I find myself tangled up in things that really seem inconsequential and that are getting in the way of me and my work. My other parent of sorts was Donald Justice, again, an extraordinary writer and teacher. And from Don, I learned that poets can get at ideas and truths as important as any that a scientist or philosopher or engineer can offer. He really saw poetry as a crucial part, playing a crucial part of in our role in our civilization. And he always said that technical facility is one thing, but what poets really need to care about most deeply is meaning. At the same time, he knew that you can't divorce technique from what you're trying to get at in a poem. In fact, he once said that he knew he got a poem's truth right if he got the music right. So if you get the music right in a poem, you've also gotten at its truth, and that's a insight into the connection between craft and meaning and music and truth that continues to be with me. Don was not a poet who produced books and books and books. He had a relatively small oeuvre, but every poem felt ripe and finished. And for better or worse, I think his perfectionism and his ambition was both were lodestars for me.